concrete walls. There's a place for us where we could go, where we could be alone.
Oh shit, I'm not moving.
Between city lights, we don't have to hide. I wanna go, do you wanna follow? There's something in the air, I can't explain it, but it's there. Ain't nobody gonna find us in our secret love affair. I don't wanna have to hide no more, it shouldn't be unfair. I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? Baby, do you wanna follow? Come with me, do you wanna follow? Baby, can't you see that? I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? Baby, do you wanna follow? Come with me, do you wanna follow? Baby, can't you see that? I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? I can't understand why we can't hold hands, but they don't know what we have is real love. Aren't you sick and tired of having to hide? I know a place, do you wanna follow? There's something in the air, I can't explain it, but it's there. Ain't nobody gonna find us in our secret love affair. I don't wanna have to hide no more, it shouldn't be unfair. I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? Baby, do you wanna follow? Come with me, do you wanna follow? Baby, can't you see that? I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? Do you wanna follow? Baby, do you wanna follow? Come with me, do you wanna follow? Baby, can't you see that? I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow?
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the live stream. I'm so glad you're here with me on a Sunday afternoon. Ready to talk FPV. I'm ready. I'm loose. I got my ice. Oh, hold on. I got my wife one of those pellet ice makers for Christmas. Now everybody in the family is we ain't even looking at that big old chunky ice from the freezer. I can't remember the last time any of us used any of that garbage, that trash ice. We got the pellet. We're all on that pellet ice life now. Oh yeah. So good. So good. It gets harder and harder the longer you know somebody to think of things to buy them for a holiday. You know, because like number one, you've already gotten them all the things that they want, right? Over the years. There's not this big long list. And number two, just the more time at least for us, you know, she wants something, you know, whatever, we'll just go ahead, you know, just whatever, we'll get it. I won't be like, oh, we got to wait for your birthday. Oh, we got to wait for Christmas. So then Christmas rolls around. I'm like, what am I going to get her? I got her a pellet ice maker. It was a good present. Just get him a power bank with a flashlight on it. Of course. Why didn't I think of that, Joey Whitaker? It's good though. It's good though. For a while, I wasn't using that. I was like, it only makes ice so fast. I'll leave it for her. And then I was just like, I didn't know. This is just good. Welcome to the live stream. Chewing ice is bad for your teeth. Shut up. First of all, this isn't any ice. This is pellet ice. Pellet ice is specifically soft and airy and easy to crunch. So, also, shut up. You're my dentist. Well, I'm gonna take your questions. That's what I'm doing. Okay, let's get on topic. I'm gonna take your questions. Here. That's what we do. We take questions. Some live streamers make content, and then at the very end of the stream, they'll take a couple questions. Not me. The whole reason I do these live streams is because I don't want to make content. I want you to make my content for me. Ask me questions. I'll answer them. It seems to work out for everybody. I'll be taking your questions here in the YouTube chat. Yeah. That's right, Brandon Beans. It's airy ice cylinders. Look at this. Look at this. You can't really see it. Joey Whitaker wants to know, is it okay for one motor to spin a few hundred RPM slower than the others? That's a great question, Joey. That's going to be our first question of the chat. I'll be taking questions here in the Discord. Because I have to, because these people in the Discord, let me tell you, they're better than you. They're better than you. And they're better than you because they pay me money. And that's how you become a good person. I'm pretty sure that's what I was taught in church school. Wait, no, sorry. That actually could be read as a dig at religion, which was not how I meant it. Not that I just try not to go there on my stream. So, whoops, getting a little careless there. My jokes are almost always intended to make me look dumb. I am always the butt of my own jokes. And yet, occasionally, accidentally, it sounds like I'm burning someone other than me. It's never on purpose. Almost never. I'll be taking questions in there, and I'll be taking your super chats. If you want to hit the $ down at the bottom of the screen, leave a super chat. There are currently no super chats, so... but let's go ahead with this question from Joey Whitaker. Is it okay for one motor to spin a few hundred RPM slower than the others? That depends, Joey, on where you're seeing that few hundred RPM. So if you're arming the quad, it is completely normal when you arm the quad, especially if the props are off, that the motors will not spin at the same RPM because the flight controller is trying to sort of balance the quad. And so it might be necessary due to a change in the center of gravity for one motor to spin faster or slower than the others. As long as the quad is flying normally, then probably everything is as expected. If you were flying the quad and you were hovering and like one motor was 300, 500 RPM higher than all the others, that would suggest maybe something, I don't know. There's a threshold where if one motor is ridiculously different than the others in a flat hover where they should basically be close to the same RPM, that would be worth investigating. You could have a bad bearing, like a bad bearing that's dragging and causing the motor to like need to be at a higher throttle position, or a motor is just making less RPM could point to a problem with the center of gravity. But generally, when you arm the quad, there's no real strong expectation that the motors will all be at the same RPM. But if you're using the motors tab, that's a different story. And I'm going to assume that you're using the motors tab because that makes the question more interesting. in the motors tab, when you raise the throttle to such and such a position, all of the motors should make about the same RPM. Assuming, what's the variable here, folks? What are the variables? Let's ask the chat. Let's quiz the chat. What are the variables that control how fast a motor spins? There's the throttle position. Okay, I'll give you that one. What are the other two variables, at least two, that control how fast the motor spins? Okay, that's right. I see two correct answers. Is it an African swallow or a European swallow? No. The kV of the motor and the voltage that the motor is getting. Some people said the battery. I consider that to be a correct answer. Generally, there's three parameters that control the RPM of a motor: the throttle position that the flight controller feeds to the ESC, the kV of the motor, and the voltage of the battery. Now, there are more things that play into that if we really wanted to dig into it. Like I said earlier, if you have a bad bearing and the bearing is dragging and creating friction, then at a given throttle position, kV, and voltage, the motor will spin slower because it has more drag. Okay, but we could assume, let's assume that those things are roughly equal for the motors. So then, what would it mean if we raised the slider in the motors tab and we saw that three of the motors were spinning at a certain RPM and one of the motors was spinning at a significantly different RPM? It could mean that that motor has a different kV. Now, probably all the motors you have are stamped with the same kV on the bell, but there's some variance in manufacturing. I think that a variance of maybe 50 kV is let's say plus or minus 50 kV from what's stamped on the bell would be actually completely unremarkable to me. I've done not a lot of motor testing, but I've done enough motor testing. And I've talked to guys like Ryan Harrell and other people who do a lot of motor testing. If you get a motor that's stamped 2400 kV and it reads 2380 or 2430, within about a plus or minus, let's say 50 kV range, that's completely normal. And so, by the way, when you see motors that are stamped 2379 kV, that is complete bullshit. That is complete bullshit. The manufacturing of the motors is not precise enough to guarantee exactly 2349 kV. When they say 2400 kV, you could go, okay, well, they're just rounding it. But anybody who makes a motor with like a ridiculously specific kV, it's marketing bullshit, and it doesn't mean anything. So the other thing that could be happening is you could have a bad ESC. If your ESC has one FET that's dead, the motor will spin slower. You could have a motor that's damaged, making it spin slower. These are all things that could come into play. We got a couple super chats popping in since my my chat plugin automatically popped them up. Let's go ahead and take them. Cali FPV, thanks for a $5 super chat. Just a PSA, 2 out of 4 O3 cams had some wobble where the camera neck meets the body of the camera. A little bit of glue fixed it. Bad QC at DJI. 2 out of 4 O3 cams had some wobble where the camera neck meets the body of the camera. Like at the threads? That's no good. Yeah. I mean, you shouldn't have to, I wouldn't trust very much glue to hold that steady. Maybe like something like E6000. Nothing rigid. I don't know, man. That's bad. Thank you for $2. Thank you for $2 from Alpha Yankee. Is it okay for 3 motors to spin a couple faster than one? That just means one of them is spinning slower. So what you could do in that situation is swap that motor to a different ESC and see if the motor still spins slowly. that tells you that the motor is a lower kV, or that the motor maybe has something wrong with it where it's dragging. If it's just maybe within 50 RPM, then I'm not too worried about it. 50 or 100 RPM, I'm not too worried about it. But if it's a significant number, I might think about the motor is bad. We got a question here. Not of This World asks, is the ceramic antenna on some Express Solaris receivers a major step down from a T antenna? Yeah, it is a step down. The antenna itself, I have heard people say, is about 6 dB worse. And 6 dB is roughly half the range. So all else being equal, that ceramic antenna is going to give you about half the range of a well-mounted T antenna. It depends a lot on the mounting, though. Because you're mounting the ceramic antenna inside the frame, then the frame itself is going to interfere with the antenna's coverage. And you could do worse than half. So if you think about it, though, you can make that 6 dB up by increasing your output power. If you go from 250 milliwatts to 1 watt, that's 6 dB. And that'll counteract, theoretically, that difference. If you go from 250 hertz down to, I think it's even as little as 150 hertz, there's a 6 dB difference. I'd have to check. I'm not 100% sure that that's correct. But if you run at a lower packet rate, essentially, there's a lower packet rate where you'll get 6 dB more sensitivity. So if you're using that ceramic antenna, do your best to mount it in a way that it's not covered up by the frame. I mean, you have to mount it inside the frame, so it's going to be occluded somewhat. And know that you're losing range, but you can take steps to mitigate that, such as using increased output power or a lower packet rate. And there are lots of cases where that compact antenna is worth the trade-off in range. Stevetrix FPV wants to know, can you talk about caps again and the value of a TVS diode? Is it necessary on 4S, or am I being overcautious? Stevetrix, I think a capacitor is always a good idea. It is 100% necessary on 6S quads. On lower voltages, you often can get away with not running a cap, but it will still be beneficial. It'll still clean up the signal, the motor noise, and so forth, and help the gyro get a cleaner signal. As far as the TVS diode goes, I think that the value of TVS diodes is in question. There is no question that TVS diodes help protect from voltage spikes, okay? TVS diodes they're a standard part of consumer electronics because voltage spikes are a thing. However, there have been some arguments that a capacitor does a really good job of cleaning up those spikes. Who was it? Was it Captain Bry? I don't want to misattribute you. I always have trouble remembering who did these tests. Captain Bry is in the... Captain Bry, was it you? Captain Bry is actually in the Discord. He could just speak up. Who did those tests that I always forget which exact person it was? Sorry to the person who did it. They did some oscilloscope tests where they measured the noise, and they measured the noise with a capacitor, with a TVS diode, and so forth. It was Jai. Thank you, Captain Bry. I always get you and Jai mixed up sometimes in my head. I hope you find that association complimentary and not insulting. But they argued that the TVS diode is really not doing anything, because the voltage spikes that we're seeing are, I guess, not big enough. I don't know. And they argued that a capacitor is so effective at cleaning up the noise that the TVS diode is not really needed. So I would say that TVS diodes are still unproven. Oh, here we go. Thank you, Captain Bry. One of these days, I'll remember. I would say that the value of TVS diodes in this specific application is unproven. That there are places where TVS diodes make sense. That's why they exist. That's why they're used in consumer electronics. But as far as... So here's the noise for a baseline bare ESC with no caps or diodes. And we have lots of noise, great big electrical noise. And now we have a capacitor, and the capacitor cleans it up significantly. Capacitor, capacitor, and a TVS diode. And we can see that the TVS diode did make a difference. It did reduce the magnitude of those bigger spikes. Here's 3 TVS diodes. And here is 1 capacitor and 1 TVS diode. And here is 1 capacitor by itself. And I think the argument that this data seems to point to is that the capacitors alone are so effective that there isn't any point in the TVS diode. We've got some simulated prop wash oscillation. Diodes not doing as good a job. And here we've got some prop strike tests where he spun the props and stuck PVC in the prop to jam the motor. Because the argument is that when you hit a branch, you get this back EMF. Well, yeah, oh yeah, look right here. Here's some voltage drops. Wait a minute, those are voltage drops. I thought we were supposed to get voltage spikes. Voltage drops again. Voltage drops. We don't see any voltage spikes. So, Jai's argument is that that it's a myth. I'm reading from Jai's presentation and interpreting it. These are not Jai's exact words, so please don't attribute them to him in that way. But it seems like Jai's argument is that it's a myth that prop strikes cause voltage spikes. That is not supported by the evidence. That electrical noise, an ESC does cause electrical noise, and a TVS diode is somewhat effective at reducing that noise, but a capacitor is so much more effective that the TVS diode is pointless. That the TVS diode is only cutting off the spikes once they get to sort of a certain point, and the capacitor by itself is so effective that the TVS sort of never activates. So I would personally say, if I believe this data, I mean, a TVS diode isn't going to hurt, and if you think it might have some benefit, feel free to install one. But Jai's argument is that a capacitor is sufficient, and a capacitor is always beneficial, if you have a low enough noise level on your quad, you may get okay gyro performance without a capacitor, but you will always get better performance with a capacitor. Last thing, what kills ESCs? The argument that voltage spikes kill ESCs doesn't seem to be supported by this particular test, because there were no voltage spikes. There were only voltage drops. And the argument that this data seems to suggest is that what kills the ESC is a drop in voltage. And what does a motor do when voltage drops? It draws constant power. A motor is a constant power source. So if voltage drops, amps will go up. And Jai's argument seems to be that what kills ESCs is a sudden drop in voltage resulting in a sudden surge in current, which kills the ESC, but a TVS diode isn't going to fix that. Sidian says, so should I not use a FETTEX spike absorber? Well, Sidian, again, it's not going to hurt you to have it, and it may have some small benefit, but it seems like this data indicates that it's not really helping much compared to the capacitor by itself. Okay. Aldo G asked, going back to the question about RPM and KV, Aldo G, I wanted to get your question because I see... Because you're a patron, and I try to take questions from patrons, at least some of the time. Would 2 motors of different size, say 2207 and 2306, with the same KV, produce the same RPM? Aldo G, let's dig into that question because it's interesting. What is the kV of a motor? It is the no load RPM that the motor will attempt to approach. So if we had a motor with 0 friction and 0 drag, and it had a certain kV, like if it was 1,000 kV, well then if we fed that motor 1 volt, it would spin at 1,000 RPMs. Exactly. And the size of the motor wouldn't matter. However, in the real world, motors have friction, they have drag, and they have a load. So what do I mean by that? Friction is the internal friction of the bearing and so forth. They have mass. Mass has inertia and makes the motor slow to accelerate. Okay? And they have drag or load, which is the prop itself pushing on the air, and the air is pushing back on the prop, and the air doesn't want to get out of the way, and as the prop spins, that creates a load on the motor. Every motor has load. That's the work that the motor is doing. And the motor has to overcome those things in order to spin, in order to accelerate and continue spinning at a certain RPM. So a 2207 and a 2306 are not going to produce the exact same RPM, potentially, depending on those conditions. Imagine a case where you have a motor with a certain load on it, a certain resistance to spinning. Well, the more torque that motor makes, the closer it is going to get to its no-load RPM. A motor that is supposed to make 10,000 RPM, but then you sort of load it down, and now it's only making 9,000 RPM. And it's getting hot because it's working. If it had more torque, maybe it would make 9,500 RPM because it could overcome that resistance more. So 2207 and 2306 are not the same stator volume. A 2306 is, I think a 2306 is just a little bit smaller. So in theory, a 2306 motor, assuming that the two motors are of identical construction, a 2306 motor is going to make slightly less torque than a 2207. And then theoretically, that means that under identical conditions, the 2306 would top out just a little bit lower than the 2207, even though they were the same kV. Or it would have to work harder or draw more current to produce the same RPM. So that's the other variable, is the current. The kV and the amp, the relationship between amps and torque is defined by the kV. I'm not going to say this right. I'm going to sound dumb, and somebody's going to go into the comments and tell me I got it wrong. But the gist of it is that a higher kV motor draws more amps to make the same torque. So if you did have a 2306 and a 2207 motor of the same kV, that 2306 motor, would it need more torque, or would it just not be able to make the same torque? If the resistance is the same, then the torque to overcome it is the same. And the 2306 simply couldn't make that torque since it was smaller, and it would top out at a lower RPM. Never mind. I take back what I was about to say. Okay. So hopefully that was educational. The best diversity receiver modules. Darius, do you mean Express LRS? Mike Curran asks, does the smart audio wire on an HD0 Freestyle VTX have to go to a UART or smart audio pad? It goes to the UART TX pad on the flight controller. Now, some flight controllers are going to label that as smart audio, but it's a UART TX pad. Boda FPV asks if I am coming to Rampage. I'm very sorry to say I am not coming to Rampage this year. I have another commitment in May, and unfortunately, it's going to conflict with Rampage and is not going to be possible for me to go. It's very disappointing. I always have a great time there. Let's see here. What do you think about the SpeedyBee Master 5 HD frame? Asks, I don't know how to read your name. It's in, I'm going to guess Arabic. But I'll answer your question. What do you think about the SpeedyBee Master 5 frame? So what I look for in a frame is that it has at least one innovative, different feature that makes me go, oh, they were really thinking. When you show, I'm not going to pick a frame and embarrass a particular frame as an example, but a lot of times when I look at a frame, I go, somebody decided to make a frame today. Good for them. And it seems to me like most of the differences between that frame and another frame are cosmetic. At which point, buy what you want, but it doesn't really, who was it? Was it Shania? No. It is Shania. That don't impress me much, as Shania would say. So let's look at this frame. I'm amazed that I remembered that. Let's look at this frame and see if we can find something interesting or innovative about it. The first thing we'll do is we'll just categorize it, okay? So it is a split deck school bus style frame. School bus style means that there's a top plate and a bottom plate with arms coming out of it, which a lot of the frames in this category are school bus style. I don't know why we call them school bus. I just heard that once, and it sort of made sense to me. Split deck means that we have a separate plate for the top or for the back and the front. So here's the back plate right here. Here's the front plate right here. And split deck, what the way that they do a split deck frame is the back frame will be on top of the arms, the front plate will be on bottom of the arms. And what that does is it gives you the advantage of a very a slammed build with short standoffs. It gives you a centralized center of gravity, but the problem with slammed builds is there's no room for the camera. And the split deck solves that problem. You've got you might have like 22, 24 millimeters of height for the whole body, and then you've got like 27 millimeters of height for the camera, which gives you more room to get the camera in there. That's the problem that a split deck solves. The other thing a split deck does is it sandwiches the arms, which gives you stronger. Let's see if I can find a bottom view. There we go. A split deck sandwiches the arms, which gives you a stronger sort of construction all around. The way a lot of frames would do this before split decks came along is you'd have the bottom plate all on top of the arms, and then you'd have an X plate on the bottom to sort of hold everything together. And a split deck sort of saves you that complexity of having that separate part. So this is a school bus style frame with a split deck. What about the geometry? Now we talk about the geometry. It looks like it is an X geometry. I can't tell if it is a perfect square or if it's a little bit of a compressed into what we would call H-style geometry. In an H geometry, the arms are compressed down into a rectangle front to back. And then the other geometry is called stretched X, where the arms are squeezed together side to side and stretched front. Nobody really makes stretched X frames anymore, do they? They were popular for racing for a while. So this looks like it's an X geometry. X geometry is very good for freestyle. It's going to have very balanced pitch and roll response. You're not going to have the PID controller is not going to have to work a lot to sort of compensate for, like, a dead cat would be an example, where the front arms are wider than the rear arms, and it makes the PID controller work harder. So we've got a split deck, school bus style frame with X geometry, maybe even true X, which would indicate that these were a square. I'm not 100% sure. Let's see what else stands out. Now that we've categorized it, we can look for ways that it differs from other examples of the class. So one thing I see is that it has a metal front end. Metal front end is going to add weight, usually, but add durability and protect the camera better. I don't insist on a metal front end. I like it when I have it. I see the advantages. I like that the camera mounting seems pretty flexible. I see that we've got lots of different holes here for different types of camera, so that hopefully, no matter what kind of camera I try to mount, I'm going to be able to put the camera at the right front to back spacing so I don't see any of these standoffs in view, but the camera is still protected from impacts. I like when they give you flexible camera mounting like this. I hate it when a frame just has like one set of screw holes for the camera, and it's like, well, sorry, if your camera doesn't fit that, you're just out of luck. The top plate is split. This is an extremely controversial decision to me. The reason this is a controversial decision is that it has the potential to really reduce the strength of the frame. So, for example, if we look at the Lumineer QAVS, the original one, not the JB edition. No, not the JB edition. Thank you. The original one. Are they still selling the original one? Here we go. The original QAVS has a split top deck. And the way they have addressed the way they've addressed the durability question is to have a standoff here. You can barely see it. And this back half of the top plate attaches there. And then we've got additional standoffs here. And this front half can be removed, or the back half can be removed by itself. It feels to me like that is compromising rigidity. Because now I can theoretically take the bottom plate and go like this and stretch it. And that's one of the reasons why when I modified the QAVS for my signature frame, I went to a one-piece top plate. That standoff adds weight, and it feels like it compromises rigidity. Yeah, maybe you'd never know the difference, but I didn't like it. Now, what SpeedyBee have done here is they have extended back this metal piece of the camera cage and attached it here. And at first that seems clever because they've avoided having an additional standoff. But I'm not convinced that it is. I want to look at how they've done this. Yeah. So here is, I really would need to see this frame to be sure I'm getting this right. But if we look here, here's the bottom plate, okay? The metal front attaches with these two screws here at the front and runs back this way. Okay. I see. So we've got some leverage here to keep that from levering back. But I don't see that in this render. Hang on a second. This is not a picture. This is a render. God dang it. See, in this render, the metal front goes all the way back. Or at least it appears to. In this render, it does not. And do you see that in this Does this come down here? What the hell is even happening here? Can I see a real picture of the actual frame? Is this a picture? Hard to tell. No, see, here's my problem. If this picture is correct, then look at the leverage from this point down. Think about what's happening if you apply stress right here. Okay? Apply downward stress right here. Do you see that you have a gigantic lever arm that is going to torque this point right here? That's a huge problem. That's a huge problem. To me, if this is an accurate representation of the frame, this is a deal breaker. We've created a gigantic lever arm where the stress applied on this point, the force applied on this point, is magnified via the length of the lever arm into this joint right here. And it feels like that has the potential to just rip the dang screw right out. Or damage the carbon. Like, you absolutely need a standoff here to translate force at this point down into the bottom plate and kind of box this in. That's to me is a huge design defect. Like, just massive. Or what they could have done is extend this metal backwards further and come up like this. So this, am I making sense here? That's, yeah. So what we need is, we either need another standoff here so that stress this direction is translated down through the bottom plate. Because what we have right now is stress this direction is torqued along this lever arm, and we're going to get a massive bending stress here that is going to rip out this screw or damage the carbon. Or we could have extended this back further and gone kind of like that, which would have reduced the length of the lever arm and could have worked. But this as it is, to me, is a, I don't, that would be a deal breaker for me on this frame. That's just a, that, not that, I mean, that alone, maybe you could find a way to live with it, but that just shows that whoever designed this frame wasn't thinking correctly. Like, this is really cool. The placement of the XT60, very cool. The plastic mount here to help isolate the electronics, very cool. The built-in cooling for the O3 air unit, very cool. There's a lot of cool stuff on this frame, but that front end is a problem that absolutely should never have made it past design and QC. And it shows that if they had handed this to someone who knew what they were doing, I think, unless I'm just completely misinterpreting what I'm seeing here, they would have said, that's unacceptable, don't do that. So either they didn't hand it to someone who told them that was unacceptable, or they didn't listen to them. And to me, that doesn't make me excited to use the frame. Because then what other mistakes have they made that I don't know about? All right, well, if I have misrepresented that in any way, let's just spend 3 more minutes on this. The one time I actually talk about a frame, then I spend a half hour talking about it. Okay, fine. Who is this? Madstech has this frame? SpeedyBee Master. Let's just see if we can get a picture of the actual... Shushian. Let's see if we can get a picture of the actual frame real quick. Does he assemble it? Please assemble it, Ian. Ian. Come on, Ian. That's not the view I need, Ian. 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 Oh, there we go. Bing. No, no, no. Hell no. Well, this standoff here, well, I don't know, guys. Does this standoff here mitigate that? So we've got this standoff here. I mean, so technically the length of our the stress we're going to be getting is only, I might be wrong. I didn't see this standoff in the other pictures. So technically, any stress here is only going to lever from here to here, okay? Because this standoff here is going to then provide counterforce and translate that stress into the bottom plate. In my head, when I was looking at the pictures, I didn't see this standoff, and that might make me a little bit less critical. I still don't like it though. All right. Maybe it's not as bad as I originally thought. I still don't like it though. I don't have a great feeling about this lever arm here. I don't have a great feeling about it. Alrighty, that's it. That's my thoughts about the SpeedyBee Master 5. It has several interesting design innovations, for which I will give them credit. Moving on. I'm a fan of the hard-mounted XT60. I'm a fan of it. It is possible that it'll break if you eject your battery. I use double battery straps, and I can't remember the last time I ejected a battery. Now, so, I mean, like, having said that, right? But I have to put a lot of work into adjusting my battery strap, my battery cable, so it doesn't get chopped. And the hard-mounted battery XT60, unlike the iFlight Evoque, solves that problem. It's pretty nice. Mark Winkle first says the frame is a tank. Yeah, well, what do I know? Let's see here. We got some super chats. Let's take some super chats. Wait, no. I want to talk about Johnny 5 first. That Johnny 5 guy, what an asshole. No, sorry. Johnny 5 is talking about the 90 FPS HD0 cam. You guys, I cannot wait for you to see my video about the HD0 90 FPS cam. I cannot wait for you to see it. I would love to. I'm trying to see if I can find my reaction and show it to you in short, in like. Okay. This is what 720p looks like. Pretty freaking obvious here, and doing some tight power loops around here, and like, I just can't believe how much precision and control I feel like I have to just dive in there. It's a little unfair because it's a windy day, and I don't know if I'm going to recreate that experience, but it's bananas. See, normally here, if I wasn't lined up right, I would just bail. I would have to bail out. I couldn't just make these quick adjustments to get in. I'm trying to demonstrate it, and I'm screwing it up. It's bananas. Oh God, oh God, oh God. After that, I went over here to this object, this little obstacle here, and did some different move. I just was... It's not the same as the first time, but I'm just as freaking excited. That's bonkers. Oh my goodness. Yeah, that the 90 FPS HD0 cam is you should try it. I'm not saying you'll have the same reaction I did, but you should try it. It's bonkers. And here's I will say, I don't know I don't know. I'm confused by my reaction to it because I have flown low latency systems before, analog, and I have flown high frame rate systems before, DJI 120 FPS, Walksnail 100 FPS. And neither of them had this reaction, to this feeling to me. And, yeah, so I'm looking forward to the reaction that you guys have when you see the video. Okay, Super Chats. Abraham, why would you say that? Cold Front in Penguin, thank you for a $10 Super Chat. Reasons why my transmitter is bound with my quad but does not show movement in the receiver tab. Does it make sense to set up Failsafe on a tiny whoop or toothpick? Cold Front and Penguin, you should set up Failsafe on all your quads, period. All of them. Why is your transmitter bound, but it does not show movement in the receiver tab? Cold Front and Penguin, that's the kind of question that is impossible to troubleshoot on a live stream, because I will have to ask you what receiver, what flight controller, show me a photo of how they're wired up, which you can't do in the chat. And then let's see your ports tab. Is your wiring correct? Is your ports tab correct? There are so many steps to troubleshooting that. I would love for you to email me, jb@joshuabardwell.com, and let's go through it. I don't want to disrespect your super chat, but there's no way we're going to go back and forth to sort of go down that troubleshooting decision tree here on a live stream. By the way, emailing me is not just a privilege for people who super chat. Anyone can email me. You don't have to feel shy about it. If you have a question, I would love to help you. That's what I do. So jb@joshuabardwell.com, Cold Front and Penguin. Let's figure it out. Tony Rodriguez, thanks for $2 super chat. Bad soldering. Gonna need more context for that. Deuce FPV, thank you for a $10 super chat. What all do I need to do to link my Vista to my DJI goggles V2? Deuce, if you have a Vista and it's not binding to your goggles V2, the most likely reason is that you flashed the Vista to the latest firmware. And that's confusing because, of course, wouldn't you want to flash your Vista to the latest firmware? But the latest firmware for the Vista, 01.01.0000, can only bind to the goggles to the goggles 2. Hang on. You said goggles V2. Oh, damn it. DJI's confusing naming convention is screwing us up. If you have the V2 goggles, then you cannot be on 01.01.000. If you have the new goggles 2 that came with the O3 Air unit, then you need to be on firmware 01.01.000. You said goggles V2, which is, it's either the goggles 2 or the V2 goggles. So now I'm confused. But that's the answer. Limit break, thanks for $2 Canadian. Barometer or just GPS? Limit break, GPS altitude is not very precise. It has something to do with the 3D geometry and the satellites and yada, yada, yada. It's not very precise. So if you care a lot about altitude, you should have a barometer. Phonic, thanks for a $5 super chat. What are you most pumped for in 2023 for FPV tech? What am I most pumped for in 2023 for FPV tech? You're gonna hate this answer. You're gonna hate this answer. The tech that I am most... So here's the thing. 4 months ago, I would have said the DJI O3 Air unit, right? You know, two weeks ago, I would have said the HC0 goggles. But I actually can't think of anything that's like on deck right now that I'm super pumped for. And so, like the Orca HD system, I'm not holding my breath. The tech that I am most interested in seeing how it pans out in 2023 is remote ID tech, which is going to piss some people off because there's plenty of people who just want to be like, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. I don't care because I'm never going to do it. I get that. I don't have the luxury of saying, I'm not doing it because of my visibility and my position and because my livelihood depends on this. But I know that there are a lot of people out there who want to comply with the rules. And I'm curious to see how manufacturers will, companies like Rotor Riot and iFlight don't have any choice but to comply with the rules. So I'm curious to see how everybody who chooses or feels obligated to comply with the rules deals with remote ID in 2023. And what kind of solutions that we will have. So that's my answer. Yeah, I don't like it. I'm sorry. I'm not gonna talk for another 20 minutes about this. I don't like it though. I just want to say, if you think about it, all stress on the whole front end of the quad. Think about, I swear to God, I'm not going to talk about this for another 20 minutes. I realize I talked about this probably longer than the chat maybe would have preferred, but whatever. Think about it. It's not just downward force here that we have to think about, but also frontal impact here. A frontal impact will tend to make this want to lever back and down. Let's erase this one. Right? Frontal impacts happen all the effing time. So a frontal impact is translated into downward, a torque here, right? And a downward force here, right? And the only thing that's stopping that is this standoff here. And that feels like a long way to go. And the other thing is that these screws are doing nothing to stop that. All these screws are doing is holding on this tiny little piece of carbon. The only thing that we have to resist this force are these screws here. And then eventually, if these screws hold on, eventually that force is transmitted back into these screws here. But only if the torque on these screws, if these screws hold strong enough and the carbon holds strong enough to resist that force. And so it feels like we have a real stress point. It feels like we have a real stress point right here, and I don't like it. And right here, and I don't like it. Okay, enough said. I could be wrong, but I just don't like it. Continuing with the Super Chats. Chris, thank you for a $5 Super Chat. Can I get away without using a capacitor if using 2S, 3S, or 4S battery on a 6S capable stack? You can get away with it, but it would be better if you had a capacitor. I'm not thinking about resonance bad for life. I'm just thinking about durability and in impacts. 80vert, thank you for 10 RON. What's an RON? Romanian Lou. Romanian Lou. Thank you for 10 Romanian Lou. Can 8 motors work on a regular F4, F7 flight controller, and how? 80vert, assuming that the flight controller has 8 motor outputs, yes. Yeah. If it doesn't have 8 motor outputs, you could still do something like a coaxial quadcopter and put 2 motors, 2 ESCs on 1 motor output, but that's less ideal. Quad Mods FPV, thank you for 14 Canadian dollars. With the advent of digital video, do we still need that old-ass character generator on the flight control boards anymore? Quad Mods, there have been flight controllers that don't have the max chip to do the OSD. Most flight controllers today include the max chip because they want the option of being used with analog cameras. But you don't need it if you're using a digital VTX. Hugh Bradburn, thank you for a $5 super chat. What's the best charger for LiPo packs that can also charge lithium iron phosphate? Can't they all? I would think that they all can. We'll check out my website, LiPo Chargers. My website is fpvknowitall.com, and I've got the ultimate FPV shopping list here. And I mean, I've got a lot of suggested chargers here. I assume that they can all do lithium iron phosphate charging. So that's pretty standard. Bob Griffith, thank you for a $5 super chat. Here's your 50% cut on the bet winnings over 4.4 and old flight controller flashing limitations. Thank you, Bob, for a $5 donation. Chad Oleschuk. Not sure I got that right. Thank you for a $5 super chat. Can you recommend a frame or two that house the DJI O3 air unit easily? I mean, are you talking 5-inch, Chad? I would say, the AOS 5 has an O3 version. The Vanny Style has an O3 version. I think most of them now are being updated to hold the O3. The question is whether they have props in view, and that requires a little more specific modification. The GEP-RC Mark V has been modified to hold the O3. PS3 asks in the Discord, oh, the Demibot? Sure. Demibot's a chonker, but it's durable. If when we move to H7 processors, is cloud build as important for new stuff or primarily old stuff? PS3, the expectation is that Betaflight is going to continue getting bigger. So today, there are lots of chips that Betaflight will completely fit in. But there are some chips that it won't. I believe the F411 and the F722. I might be wrong about that. I get mixed up as to which ones don't have enough flash space and which ones do have enough flash space. So I should just back away from that. But some of them don't, and some of them do. But Betaflight's going to continue getting bigger, and that's why the cloud build has been rolled out. Because eventually, Betaflight will be too big for all of them, and you will have to use the cloud build functionality. Joey W., despite the fact that we have cloud build, F3 is still out in the cold. I'm told that F1 and F3 just aren't fast enough. Kyler Pennick says, I was thinking of getting the Walksnail VRX, but I was wondering if it would be worth it with my HD3 goggles. Kyler, I almost could answer that question for you. You can see on the table that I've got some stuff set up there. I had, you see the box right there? I had some of my patrons graciously lend me their goggles, a selection of older analog goggles, and one of them was the HD3. So I could test them with the HDMI input and the Walksnail VRX. Sadly, the set of HD3s I've got, the HDMI input seems to not be working. So I wasn't able to test them. So I can't answer that question for you. The HD3, what's the resolution of those screens? $800 by 600. HDMI input mode, 800 by 480, 16:9 ratio. Oh, that might answer my question as to why it didn't work. Oh, hey, chat, help me. So I got the HD3 goggles, tried to use them with the Walksnail VRX, they didn't work. Tried to use them with my laptop, they didn't work. The laptop literally didn't even detect a screen. And I'm seeing here, it says 800 by 480 HDMI input. Can anybody tell me, do the HD3s, this is the HD3, not the HDO anything. Does the HD3 support 720p input on its HDMI? Can anybody, Kimbo, if you have the HD3, can you do me a favor? Like, just, you don't have to do it now during the live stream. Anybody out there who has the HD3, will you plug it in and just test it and see if it'll take a 720p 60 input? Matthew Doherty, I tend to agree with you. If the laptop didn't even detect that a display was connected, then they're just broke. I think mine are just broke. But I would be curious if they, like, have some weird requirement for the input signal. Nevertheless, let's answer the question. With an 800 by 600 display, that's a 4:3 display. So your 720p signal is going to be letterboxed? If it wasn't letterboxed, you'd have a 1280 by 720 signal being put on an 800 by 600 display. That's not enough pixels. It will scale it down, but it's not going to give you the best result. And it's going to be stretched. If you were to letterbox it, then you would be dealing with 800 by 600. You would, is 800, wait, 800 by 600. Yeah, that's a 4:3. What are you going to end up with? 1280 by 720. Your 720 is going to get cut down. It would be 800. Would it be 800 by 480? Yeah, of course. It would be 800 by 480. So 480 out of 720 is like, you're going to be like at 2/3 resolution on the verticals. It's not going to be great. It would work, but it's not going to be great. Yeah, that's the thing is, though, if you buy the Walksnail VRX and your current goggles are shitty and don't work, well, VRX is still money well spent. You can just buy a better set of goggles. Jackalope wants to know, are single blade razors best for head shaving? Jackalope, I don't use a single blade razor to shave my head because I shave my own head, and I need to be able to just go, I can't really see what I'm doing while I'm shaving it in the shower. So I'm sure that with enough practice and skill, you could shave yourself with a single blade razor, but I just use a regular safety razor. There was a question here I wanted to get. The question was, can I run a 1S Walksnail VTX off the 5-volt regulator on my quad? That's very risky. Madstech popped his Walksnail VRX, but when he was running it off a power supply at 5 volts. And Madstech said that he thinks it's very sensitive to overvoltage. So if you were running it off your 5-volt regulator, like, you 100% would want to put a little capacitor on that pad. Not on the main battery lead, but actually on the 5-volt pad. You would want to get like a 7-volt or an 8-volt capacitor, or 5-volt capacitor, whatever, and put it on that pad. And personally, I would hesitate to run a 1S Walksnail VTX off a 5-volt regulator. Robert Lowe, thank you for a $5 super chat. Did you have a question, Robert? No, just a donation. Thank you, sir. Meme FPV, thanks for a $5 super chat. Looking to build a second freestyle rig, and I want to limit new spare parts. I have the Nazgul Evoke. Any reason not to use the Zing 2207? Hell no. That's a great motor. You absolutely should use it. What is this? What is this?
Welcome to the new ATX by Headblade. Like the Headblade Sport, the Headblade ATX features a rubberized finger ring for a custom fit. It is important to position the ATX on your middle finger between the first and second knuckle. The ATX is a totally new design, 3 years in the making. Utilizing our patented car-like suspension, we've now...
Don't say utilize. Listen. Stop saying utilize. Just say use. Just say use. It doesn't make you sound smarter. Just say use. Okay? Look, watch.
Design, 3 years in the making, and second knuckle. The ATX is a totally new design, 3 years in the making. Utilizing our patented car-like suspension.
It's a totally new design, 3 years in the making. Using our patented, see, it's fine. It's fine. Just say using. Okay.
We've now added soft touch all-terrain wheels and
Is this a joke? Is this a joke?
have incorporated the best of today's blade technology. With the ATX, it's vital that you keep the front wheels in contact with your scalp at all times. This allows you to drive the ATX using long, smooth strokes. The blade will automatically pivot. The rear-mounted 4-blade cartridge eliminates the chance of nicks utilizing a custom...
Using a custom, it's fine.
automatically pivot. The rear-mounted 4-blade cartridge eliminates the chance of nicks utilizing a custom spring-mounted adapter.
Using a custom.
All head blades are designed around the concept of shave by feel. This means that by eliminating the conventional handle, the head blade allows the users to feel as he or she...
I learned it's not even right. To make practical and effective use of. Well, that's... Just stop. Are there more definitions? Look at this. Look at this. Oh, it's peaking. Oh, it's actually gone down. Interesting. To turn to practical use or account. See, utilize suggests that it's being like used in like an unexpected way. I don't know. To put into service, especially to attain an end. Use implies availing oneself of something as a means or instrument to an end. I think utilize may suggest the discovery of a new, profitable, or practical use for something. I don't know. Yeah, like say I used a wooden bucket utilized as a planter. The use as a planter was unexpected from the original purpose of the wooden bucket. That's what the word utilize. But it's just become a synonym for use. And everybody says utilize all the time because more syllables make you sound smarter. Why would you use something when you could utilize it? I'm going to utilize my live stream to rant about this topic. Exactly. Abraham. You use a fork to eat your food. You utilize the edge of the fork to cut through soft food instead of needing a knife. Stop saying utilize. Okay, moving on. Alpha Yankee, thanks for a $2 super chat. Use. That's right, Alpha Yankee. Me Drone, thanks for a $2 super chat. use. I'm glad you guys all agree with me. Wotan asks, since DVR doesn't always represent the actual quality that you see in the goggles, how much worse are the HD0 goggles compared to DJI? Okay, Wotan, I want to tackle this question. I hope this makes the live stream clips channel, because this is a discussion I've wanted to have, and now thank you for the opportunity to do it. That's how that means, hey Blunty, please make sure this makes the live stream clips channel. That was my USB, by the way. Sorry, I had my desktop unmuted. That sound was not your computer. Let me start over so the clip can be clean. Since DVR doesn't always represent the actual quality that you see in the goggles, how much worse are the HD0 goggles compared to DJI? Okay, first of all, way back in the day, when everyone used analog goggles and a lot of people used Fat Shark goggles have a particularly crappy analog DVR. It is motion JPEG encoding at a low bit rate, and on top of that, for whatever reason, the DVR had worse signal than the actual screens. In other words, you would see breakup in the DVR that if you took a camera and put it in the screen and recorded the screen, the breakup was not there. And as someone who tried to test analog receiver modules in a repeatable way, I struggled with how to represent realistically what the person was seeing in the goggles. I ended up 3D printing mounting brackets to mount a GoPro in the eyepiece of a Fat Shark goggle so that I could literally record the screens and I didn't have to rely on the DVR. That has led to a widespread belief that what you see in the DVR is not as good as what you see in the goggles, and therefore you can't trust when a YouTuber puts a DVR up. There is some truth at the end of this discussion, but I want to start with the falsehoods. That is not as true anymore. DJI and Walksnail, for example, when they record DVR, well, the DJI V2 goggles and the Walksnail goggles, for sure, are literally just taking the video frames and recording them to the SD card. It's literally exactly the same data that you see on the screen. In one case, it gets sent to a screen driver. In one case, it gets written to the SD card. It's literally the same data. Okay? In the case of the O2 goggles are re-encoding the data. Because if you think about it, the O2 goggles can record the whole screen. They record the menus, they record the OSD. That stuff is not present in the video feed coming from the camera. So the O3 goggles are re-encoding the data. And so anytime you are re-encoding the data, there is the potential for a reduction in quality. But if you take the O3 DVR and, I don't know, a screen recording, I don't know what you would do. Oh, the onboard DVR? No, the onboard DVR is clearly going to be better quality, but that's not what... I guess you would have to have literally a camera in the eyepiece of the O3. I think you'll see that DJI has given enough bit rate to that recording that the O3 DVR is a fair representation of what you see in the goggles. And the same is true for HD0. I don't know exactly how the HD0 DVR works. I do think they are re-encoding the signal in some way, so there is the potential for a reduction in quality. But when I have done frame comparisons and screen comparisons, I find that the HD0 DVR looks very close to what I think I'm seeing in the goggles. So, why then do people look at product reviews and they go, oh, that looks so much worse than what I see in the goggle? And they say that products, especially HD0 gets this, they say that it's not getting a fair representation, that the YouTube reviews make the product look worse than it really does. Here's one reason, and it's not the DVR. It's YouTube. YouTube has a very conservative bit rate that it allocates to its streams. And it does that because it has to transmit a lot of data to a lot of people all over the world. And if they were to give 45 or 50 megabits per second, well, that would be a huge amount of bandwidth. And a lot of people are just like watching on their phone. What do they care if they're getting 75 megabits per second? You know, who cares? So whenever I upload videos where especially like test videos where I care about the video quality, I render the video in 4K resolution. And the reason for that is that YouTube gives 4K videos higher bitrate. So even if I have I record all my content natively in 1080p, but I render it at 4K. I think 4K 35 megabits per second is my standard. I upload it to YouTube, and YouTube gives it 35 or whatever megabits per second they give to 4K. And that's not enough bitrate for a 4K stream, a good quality 4K stream. But it is enough bitrate for a 1080 stream. So I've got a 1080 video. I'm lying to YouTube and I'm telling it it's a 4K video to trick YouTube into giving it more bandwidth. Now, none of that matters unless you choose the 4K option when you're playing back. If you just let YouTube show you a 1080 stream, you'll get reduced image quality. Whenever you are watching a test of HD0, Walksnail, DJI, and somebody like me shows you sample footage, you must go down and change the stream to 4K. Even if you are not watching on a 4K display, you still are not getting the best video quality and you really can't tell what's going on. Okay, so then, the other thing that could be going on, and this is, I think, a little controversial. I have had the experience of looking at an FPV goggle and going, oh my God, this looks so good. And then I look at the DVR and I go, why doesn't it look that good? And I go and I do a frame by frame comparison. And the DVR, I can see that the DVR is accurate. I'm like, what the hell is going on here? It's the OLED screens. It's the OLED screens. The OLED screens in the goggles, this is what I personally think. OLED screens look so freaking good. And then you look at that DVR, and if you're not looking at it on like a really ultra bright, contrasty OLED screen, it doesn't look as good. And it's not the bit rate or the resolution, it's just the slapping your eyeballs with pixels, with lumens. Okay? So I want to get rid of the myth that the DVR doesn't represent what you see in the goggles. That was true for old analog goggles. For modern high-quality analog goggles like Orca, SkyZone, not HDO2 because they still have the same shitty DVR. They improved it a little bit, but I still don't. But for modern goggles with high-quality H.264, H.265, and modern, they're going to give you a very accurate representation of what you see in the goggles. Maybe not perfect. For DJI V2 and Walksnail, the DVR is literally the exact same data as you see in the goggles. For O3 and HD0, it is, I believe it's re-encoded. I know it's re-encoded for O3. I believe it is for HD0. But they have chosen a high-quality encoding that is essentially indistinguishable from the original signal. And it's just YouTube and or the fact that you're not seeing it on an OLED. But here's what I don't like. I've done tests with I hate to pick on HD0 because I feel like HD people, I don't know, because I feel like I don't want to sound like I have a beef. But this happens more with HD0 than anything else, and I'm just going to say it. You post a video of HD0 and immediately the HD0's biggest fans show up in your comments to say, mine looks better than that. What have you done? What have you done to sabotage HD0? I'm looking at your video. It looks so bad. Mine is better. You must be out to get HD0. Or they'll say, yeah, you can't, or if they're more charitable, they'll say, you can't trust the DVR anyway. That looks way better than that in real life. I don't agree. I don't agree. I think the DVR looks very similar to what you see in real life. It's just that your subjective experience while you're flying. The other thing is, while you're flying, you are thinking about flying. While you're watching the DVR, you are thinking about watching the DVR. You have more attention to notice the video quality while you're looking at the DVR. While you're flying, you're distracted. So, anyway, that's my take on that. Joey W., OLEDs are brighter and more saturated and have darker blacks. And I think there is value in, you say they're just brighter, but like, that's like saying, all I did was add a little more salt to this food. Yes. And that literally means your tongue can taste more flavors. A screen that's brighter means that it is projecting more photons into your eyeball's sensory organs. Which, like, I don't know how you could go, yeah, how could that possibly matter? That's like the one thing you're doing with your eyes is collecting photons. So a display that gives them more photons seems like it's, granted, at a certain point, they're so bright that you hurt your eyes. And, obviously, it's not all or nothing, but OLED is, I am completely sold on OLEDs for FPV goggles. And like, if you don't believe me, fly OLEDs all day, and then like on your last 2 packs, switch to an LCD goggle, and see if you don't go, oh my God, what is wrong with these goggles? Why are they not, do they go up any higher? That's been my experience anyway. But, I respect your decision if you don't agree. Obviously, it's subjective. You just disagree. Finton wants to know, I'm planning my first build. Are these components good together? The Mamba F7 Mini 55 stack, Flyfish Volador VD5. What is that? Flyfish Volador. Oh, it's the frame, I see. There's nothing wrong with that frame. Does it have 30 millimeter mounting? Is it only 20 millimeter mounting? These 2 mounting holes are 20 millimeter. The 30 millimeter, these screws look like they would be where 30 millimeter screws would be, but they look like they're arm screws. Does it have? It says it has 30 millimeter mounting holes. Fair enough. I'll believe you. Emax Eco 2306, excellent choice. Foxeer T-Rex cam. I think the T-Rex cam is a ultra high resolution cam, but I'm not convinced it has fantastic latency. It says low latency. Well, what does that mean? It says low latency, right? 2 millisecond latency. How can they have a 1500 TV line wide dynamic range camera with 2 millisecond latency? There's some shenanigans going on there. It can't be 2 milliseconds glass to glass. It's got to be 2 milliseconds processing delay. That doesn't feel right, but okay. Does both 4.3 and 16.9. 150 degree diagonal field of view with 4.3. It looks like it's a 16.9 sensor natively. That looks like a good camera. $45, it better be a good camera. Let's see here. Foxeer Reaper Extreme, good VTX. Maytech GPS. Flywoo has a new set of GPSs that have a new chipset that is super, super sensitive. Like basically it can receive signals from all of the GPS networks at once instead of just one at a time, and it's way better at locking sats and getting position. I would absolutely look at the new Flywoo GPSs. I haven't tested them yet, but and the EP1RX. Yeah, those are all good choices. I don't have any arguments about any of those. Runcam Phoenix, of course, I like. Let's see here. Is going for a 9-month-old build guide okay? Asks Mr. Mojo. As long as you can still get the parts at a good price, probably 9 months, the stuff is still like gonna do you okay. Emmanuel Raphael says, your solution was right. The props were on the quad wrong. Thank you. Today is the day I joined Patreon forever. I'm your diehard fan from Bristol. Keep making content. Thank you, Emmanuel. That's very gratifying. I'm glad I was able to help. I mean, MJ built the UAV Futures $99 build in 2022. No, you didn't. Can you even still get those parts? Can you even still get those parts? UAV Futures $99 build from 2018. G'day! Stu!
What we're talking about, it's the updated version, the UAV Futures $99 build, the 2018 version. Now, about a year ago,
Oh, that was so long ago. G'day! Get pumped. Oh, man. Let's see how many of these things you can still get. Page not found. Still, you can still get the flight controller. Can you? Did it? I guess we'll never know. It could be a redirect. Oh, still get the flight controller. Page not found. You still get the VTX. Don't buy this VTX. For God's sake, don't buy this VTX, but okay. Nope. Oh my God. There are way better $26 cameras. Okay. Wow. The Samguk is all done. You still can't buy Samguk, can you? You can still buy Samguk motors. How is that possible? Oh, that because Flash Hobby bought DYS or DYS became Flash Hobby. They renamed themselves. And they're still making the Samguk motors. Wow. When these motors cost $8, they were worth it. If they cost $14, no one should buy them. Buy the Emax Eco motors for the same price. These motors were really bad. But for $8 a piece, you'd be like, okay, I'm going to buy 6 of them and maybe 4 will be good. So, there you go. Wow, somebody points out the flight controller alone. Let's see, is it this one? The flight controller alone costs $83 on this $99 build. That's what's happened. Just think about that for a minute. Yeah, okay. What should I set my RSSI dBm warning at? I'm running Express LRS 150 Hertz. Good question. If we search for Express LRS receive sensitivity, or receiver sensitivity, we find a web page with this table on it. You are running Express LRS 150 Hertz. The sensitivity limit is minus 112 dBm. I would add at least 3 dB to that for your warning. So that would be 109 dBm, or maybe as much as 6 dB, depending on how much of a buffer you want. So I'd say between 106 and 109, negative 106 to negative 109 dBm would be the threshold for that. As long as I'm on this topic, hey, devs, you got a lot of free time, right? You got nothing to do. Here's an idea. Wouldn't it be great if the receiver could communicate to the flight controller a default threshold for RSSI dBm and, I don't know, SNR? So that instead of, so like what I'm thinking is, let's say I'm flying Express LRS, and one day I say, you know what, I'm gonna go extra long range today, and I changed my packet rate down to 50 Hertz. But I've got my RSSI dBm set for 150 Hertz. Oops. So wouldn't it be nice if at some point in the process, the receiver could use telemetry to say to the flight controller, right now, my dBm threshold is such. Wouldn't that be cool? Get on it. I know you're here. I know you hear me. I know you think that's a good here's the problem. I know you think that's a good idea. Right now you're like, "Oh, that is a good idea." Yeah. And then you're like, "Man, fuck this guy. Who does this guy think he is?" But then you're gonna be laying in bed tonight and you're gonna be like, "That was a really good idea." Right? I mean, the flight controller already knows the RF mode, but the flight controller doesn't know the actual like dBm sensitivity because it doesn't know RF mode, you know, and you wouldn't want the beta flight devs to have to maintain an updated table of sensitivity parameters for every possible control link. So what the way it would work is that you have a default RSSI dBm sensitivity, but then there's some mechanism whereby the receiver could say, hey, look, now use this instead. And I guess you would need a beta flight option to say, allow the receiver to override the default RSSI dBm. So that the way, you know, it would maintain backwards compatibility with people who just expect it to be a fixed number. But going forward, as we have more and more control links, Crossfire, Tracer, Ghost, Express LRS, with more and more RF modes, a simple single RSSI dBm threshold is not useful. And then if the manufacturer doesn't implement that, it falls back to the fixed number in the CLI, which is the way it's always been. But for any manufacturer or protocol that wants to implement that, it would mean that you could just switch your RF mode and the sensitivity limit would stay the same. I feel like it would also be nice to communicate SNR, although the SNR is probably going to be the same for all of these, but I guess I don't know that that's true. Anyway, there we go. Does the RX know the packet rate the TX is transmitting? Yeah, of course it does. The receiver knows the packet rate because the receiver and the transmitter have to both agree on the packet rate, or it wouldn't work. Drone Camps RC, did you just hide somebody from the channel? I'm surprised to see that. Please don't. Hang on. Anybody who's a moderator, feel free to time people out or not show comments. But please don't just ban people. You've just banned them from the channel permanently. I would at least like to see the message. What were they saying? No. Just time them out. Just time them out. That's a bunch of bullshit, but I usually don't ban people from the channel simply for spamming the chat. I appreciate your active moderation, but just a timeout. Yeah, would you mind unbanning them? Just time them out. I appreciate it. It's annoying as shit. I 1000% agree that they should be timed out. And if they keep doing it, maybe. I don't know. Banning from the channel is a pretty big deal. And I see what's going to happen is they're going to say, you banned me from your channel. And I'll be like, no, I didn't. What kind of an idiot are you? And then it turns out they are banned. No worries. Yeah, just time them out. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'll agree once I see the messages. I actually didn't see the messages. I mean, those are some annoying messages. I would just time them out. At least at first. Anyway, thank you. But thank you for noticing. I hadn't noticed the annoying messages. I do appreciate you taking your mod responsibilities seriously. The only reason I jumped on it right then is because I'm going to forget that it happened. And I like to stay on top of who's getting banned from my channel. So I just wanted to jump on it real quick. Appreciate it. I only ban people. There's only one thing that gets you banned. And I'll tell you what it is. That this isn't just an insta ban. If you show up on my channel and you're just talking a lot of shit, like if I see a comment and it's just like completely negative, you suck, you're stupid, I hate you, you're whatever, just completely negative. Then the next thing I do is I look at your comment history. And if like you just are a normal person participating on the channel and then there's this one comment that I read as negative, then I go, oh, maybe I fucked up today. Maybe he's having a bad day. I don't know. And I just let it go. But if I see a negative comment and then I look and your last like 5 comments have all just been, you suck, I hate you, you suck, you're stupid, then I'm just like, oh yeah, you don't need to be here. Then I just ban you. That's the thing that I'm like, I don't need you to be in my comment section. I go out of my way to try to read as many comments and messages as possible. So to just say, I just don't read the comments. Well, I don't do that. But it does mean that when I read the comments, I don't want to subject myself to someone who just wants to berate me. So that's who I definitely just ban permanently. Who do I ban permanently? Should we look? Ooh, that's risky. Some people don't know they've been banned because you can still leave comments. It's just no one sees your comments. Should we look? Okay. Let's see. So a lot of these people are going to be just people who spam the channel or advertise. That's the other thing. A lot of these people are people who they're just bots or advertisers. These do not appear to be in any particular order. I banned Jesus Christ. Wow. A lot of these text me on Telegram things get banned. Don't ask me why these people got banned. I literally cannot tell you. Except in general, like if you're just spamming, then you get banned. And if you just really, like I said. I banned Donald Trump. Oh, this is going to be controversial. I'm not going to go into it. I'm not going to go into it. Let's see. Why is Morton Upshot banned? I recognize that name. I must have had a. Don't ban people. It takes a fair amount to get me to ban you. So I probably, just because I can't remember why I banned you doesn't mean I'm gonna like go back on my decision. I'm pretty sure if you ended up here, then I definitely think you just belong here. Let's see. But I usually, after I ban you, I never think of you again, so. So I'm not going to remember why I banned you. Let's see. Looks like we have less than 1,000 people banned. Yeah. Looking for names. Anyway, these are all the people. You can see if your name is on this list. There you go. That's it. That's all of them. Mr. Steele isn't banned. Shut up. There might have been a fake Mr. Steele troll account. Why is Mupshot banned? I don't know. Mupshot, you're here. You're in my Discord. Why are you banned? I thought that's weird too. What did you do, man? I'll unban you, Mupshot. You're clearly not too much trouble. Or because you're here in my Discord. Is that really your account, Morton? He's literally in the Discord right now. Oh my God. How did that happen? What did you do, Mupshot? Did you piss me off? Okay, Morton Upshot. Is that you? Is that your account, Morton? What did you do, Morton? All right, I'm unbanning you right now, Morton. I don't know what you did, but you pissed me off one day. But you're here in my Discord, and you're obviously not making too much trouble, or you wouldn't be in the Discord. The mods would have told me. All right, I unbanned you. I did notice I was like, why is Morton in this ban list? I don't know. I can't remember. Should feel good about that. Okay, let's continue. You're back, Morton. Brown Solo, thank you for a $5 super chat. Does the V-Fly short saver not like 6S input? Mine trips anytime I use it with 6S, but it works on 4S. No, it works fine on 6S. The reason it's tripping is because... Hey, Morton, you're back! What did you do, Morton? Why did I ban you? One of us was having a bad day. I don't know. The reason that the short saver is tripping is because you're pulling too much current. If it's pulling more current on 6S for some reason, that's going to make it trip. But it's not that it doesn't like 6S. Hey, Phantom FPV, good to see you. Sunshine, thank you for a $5 super chat. Good cam out of service. Got paid drone gig, not high end, but needs to look decent. Which to use? First gen air unit, DJI cam, or Hero 3 Black. Yikes. Oh, boy. I can't speak to the Hero 3 Black. I don't know how good a Hero 3 is. That's going back a ways. I would feel embarrassed to deliver to a client footage from a DJI cam. The DJI camera, probably with good color grade, could be made to work. Especially, you have to be using the onboard air unit recording. But Jesus, sunshine, you've got a paid gig. Just go buy a camera, dude. Go buy a camera. Right? If you can't afford it, return the camera after the gig or something. Like, if you've got a paid gig, you really can't. I mean, I guess it depends on where you're at in your career, but like, you need to deliver a quality product to the customer. That's the thing. As a professional, you have to take pride in your work, and you have to deliver a quality product to the customer. If you cannot deliver a quality product to the customer, you should not take their money. So now you're in a situation where you've accepted the customer's money, and you've made a commitment to be there and shoot the gig for the customer, and you don't have the equipment to deliver on that. The answer to that cannot be to deliver a substandard product to the customer. That's not acceptable. Now, if you look at the footage from the DJI Air unit or the GoPro 3 and you say, I can make this work, and you sincerely feel that it represents the quality and the standard of work that you're comfortable with, and that the customer will be happy with it, then you could make that decision. But the fact that you're asking me on the live stream suggests that you feel, and I agree, that that is not sufficient. And you're compromising, and you shouldn't do that. Don't do that to yourself. Don't do that to your company. Don't do that to your customer. If you need a GoPro to shoot this and your GoPro is broken, get a GoPro. It's time to pull out your credit card. It's time to put a GoPro on a credit card. And if you can't afford the GoPro, then return it. Return it after the weekend. Or say to yourself, I need to be charging more for these jobs because I need to have 2 GoPros. Because frankly, if you're accepting money to shoot gigs and you only have 1 camera, and if you lose that camera, you can't do the gig, you should not be accepting money to do gigs. I say that with, in a loving and supporting way. That's why a professional will have 3 cameras and 3 quads and feel nervous if they don't have a 4th on, in the wings. You have to be able to deliver for your customer. So borrow a GoPro, rent a GoPro. God forbid you show up and that GoPro breaks or your quad breaks. So it really comes down to what your customer is expecting. I can imagine jobs where a DJI Air unit onboard recording could be good enough. It records 1080p. The dynamic range is good. The colors are okay. And with a good color grade, you could probably get acceptable results. Not like Michael Bay acceptable results, but, just shooting somebody's something or other, maybe. But in general, you shouldn't make your customer accept substandard work because you had a logistical problem. That's your problem, not your customer's problem, and you need to solve it, if you can. So you could borrow a GoPro. I don't know. That's my take on that. Alistair Clark, thank you for a $6 super chat. Just getting into FPV and just finished your beta flight playlist, so I'm sending you a few bucks. Oh, thank you, Alistair. Thank you for €6. Appreciate it. Black Moses, I think that the O3 doesn't perform quite as well with the V2 goggles in terms of range and penetration as it does with the goggles 2. I don't have enough hard evidence to really back that up, and I don't know why. But it feels to me, with the O3 air unit, you can get down to like 1 or 2 megabits per second, and the video is kind of crappy and, blocky, but fairly usable. It doesn't get stuttery. Whereas with the V2 goggles, it feels like down around 3 to 5 megabits per second, it is both blocky and stuttery and becomes very, very difficult to fly. So I do think that the O3 is worse with the V2 goggles, but I don't know why. And people are suggesting, well, maybe it's H.264 versus H.265. I don't know the answer. Do we know for a fact that it uses H.264 and not H.265 with the V2 goggles? I mean, do we? Anyway. Could look at the DVR data. Yeah, that makes sense. That's true. That makes sense. I mean, Sunshine, when's the gig, Sunshine? Sunshine, when's the gig? And where are you in the world? I mean, we'll get you sorted out, Sunshine, unless it's like tomorrow. Next week. Okay, so you have a whole week to solve this problem. We get you sorted out, man. I mean, somebody can lend you a GoPro. What do you need? What do you need to do the gig? Like, what was your ACAM? Somebody on the Discord has a camera they'll lend you. I might have one I could send you. We'll get you sorted out. Limit Break, thanks for 10 Canadian dollars. Thanks for everything. Before I found you on here, I wouldn't have even tried to tinker with any of this stuff. I'm midway through my first build, and I haven't blown anything up. Haven't blown anything up yet. And I've repaired a few binding flies. Midway through my first build and haven't blown anything up. I watched a video recently. I've been watching these videos. I found this guy. He is Norway's best rock climber. His name is Magnus. I don't even know his last name. And he does rock climbing content. And I watched a video where he free soloed a pitch with Alex Honnold, who's famous for free soloing El Cap, among other things. And it was Magnus's first sort of big free solo. And about 2/3 of the way up, they're resting on a ledge. And Magnus says, I don't want to jinx it, but I'm really glad I did this. This has been really great. And Alex says, let's just finish the pit. Let's just finish the climb. And the way I read that was like, don't get complacent. You could still die if you fall. Don't start thinking, oh, it's over, it's all good. Stay focused. And I think of that. It's not the same as you're halfway through your build and you haven't blown anything up yet, but I think of that. The number one place to blow things up is at the end of the build, when you finally power it up. Anyway. We are 2 minutes from the end of the stream. Is Aaron Ciotti streaming today? I would guess that he is, and I would hope that he would be. There he is! Aaron Ciotti. Yeah. Free soloing is bonkers. It's bonkers because it feels, I mean, obviously I don't rock climbs, but it feels like it is, depending on the route you pick, if it's an easy enough route and you're a highly skilled climber like Magnus, like I don't think that Alex would have had Magnus do a climb where there was actually a risk that Magnus couldn't physically do it. So I think Alex picked a route that he knew Magnus was 110% physically capable of doing. And then the only thing you can screw up is mentally. You could lose focus. You could make a mistake. You could, and so it's weird to have something like free soloing that is, for these guys who are at this incredibly high level of skill and physical fitness, it is this almost purely mental challenge that the only way you're going to die is if you lose focus, if you get stupid and make a mistake. But if you maintain focus and don't make a mistake, you will accomplish this feat and you'll be fine. And it's this weird thing where it's weird. There aren't a lot of things in life that are like that. Like, it's always better if you maintain focus, but sometimes just shit happens. Or you're just not good enough that day. Anyway, interesting stuff. That is it, folks. It's 2 p.m. That's the end of the stream. Thank you so much for all your messages. Thank you for being here. Siadi, get on it. Adit, you seem to really appreciate when I notice you on stream, and so I will. You keep saying that we're friends, and I'm not sure if you mean the same thing by that I hope that you mean. But there you are, Adit. I see you. Okay. Thumper FPV, I see you too. I see you too, buddy. Alrighty, folks. That's going to do it. We are out of here. Siadi, have a great stream. I'll see you tomorrow at 8 p.m. Good night, everybody. Goodbye, everybody.